They want to see me play RuneScape, but I can't Alt-Tab and do something else. And I started asking if there's any RuneScape lore videos that I should know about. In other words, the Leroy Jenkins of RuneScape. The Falador Massacre, I don't know what that is. Okay. This is a 1-hour video. This is crazy.
Events like the Falador Massacre in 2006 will forever be a part of RuneScape history.
A ticket came in, it said someone's running around Falador killing people.
The Falador Massacre is one of the most well-known events to have ever happened in RuneScape.
Bro, there's open world PvP, people are getting killed outside your house.
This is Duriel 3-1.
One of the most extreme versions of bug abuse was the Falador Massacre.
In a way, this video doesn't need an introduction.
Okay.
The 6th of June 2006, the Falador Massacre. One of the most infamous glitches in RuneScape history. The day that the most popular free MMO in the world saw players cut down in cities, in places they had always thought were safe. The official documentary, the official history book, its own space on Wikipedia, even being canonized in the lore and having official in-game events to commemorate the 10-year anniversary.
It's a lot of people.
People have talked about and referenced the massacre extensively. Heck, you've probably already watched a mini-documentary about it before. So what else is there to say on what is probably the most documented event in RuneScape's long history? What can I tell you that countless of YouTube videos and player interviews haven't already? Well, I never make a video unless I can tell you something new on the topic. And after months of collaborating with Jagex themselves, getting the inside scoop, and diving through every other piece of media made about the massacre, we're finally ready to give you the whole story. Time to buckle up and bank your items, because it's time to unravel the 6.
Okay, hold on. So this came out 2 years ago, but it sounds to me, based on this video, the Falador Massacre was like talked about a lot before this video. It was just a known thing, but there was no like good video on it, I guess. 2006. Okay.
16 years of history that have piled up since the events of the Falador Massacre.
Why am I looking at all these peace bloom? Okay.
Our tale begins back in 2002, somewhere in the mythical fantasy land known as New Zealand. 12-year-old Lincoln has heard about this new, cool game called RuneScape and decides to sign up to it.
Okay.
A novel medieval adventure game designed by a trio of nerdy British brothers
Is this what the game looked like? Or is this like edited to look even worse? This is...
Medieval adventure game designed by a trio of nerdy British brothers with a sense of wit and charm that you don't really see in other MMOs of the time. The vast world is the perfect place for a 12-year-old to get lost in, and blissfully unaware of where this road would take him, Lincoln finishes punching in his details and is ready to enter the world of Gielinor for the first time. Lincoln, who you probably know better as Cursed You, his in-game name, is quickly hooked by RuneScape and starts putting in some serious hours. He's eventually joined by his close friend, Josh, who calls himself Cursed You, with a 0 instead of an O. The duo play together and call themselves the Cursed You Brothers, since their names kind of look similar if you squint hard enough. Lincoln quickly falls down the PvP rabbit hole, becoming an avid player killer who raises his stats and improves his gear solely to get better at taking down other players. He finds a good amount of success in this path and becomes relatively rich quite quickly. When RuneScape 2 was released in March 2004, introducing the dual arena alongside it, Lincoln turned away from the wilderness and went all in on staking, 1v1 matches with some heavy bets on the line for the winner. Now, in 2004, most stakes were done through magic rather than melee or ranged. Lincoln already had decent PvP skills from his time before the duel arena, but he could get an even bigger advantage if he raised his magic level to the max. In fact, he discovered that he could get 250 XP per game tick by carefully using the charge spell, available to everyone at level 80 magic. With the wealth behind him to buy all the supplies he needs, he quickly achieves 99 magic in early 2004, becoming the 254th person to hit the milestone. Now, with only 254 people at 99 magic, and only a fraction of them actually using the skill to stake.
Wait, there's only 200 people at 99?
To everyone at level 80 magic. With the wealth behind him to buy all the supplies he needs, he quickly achieves 99 magic in early 2004, becoming the 254th person to hit the milestone. Now, with only 254 people at 99 magic, and only a fraction of them actually using the skill to stake, it's not hard to guess that Lincoln did very well for himself at the duel arena. If you knew what to do, staking was an incredible moneymaker, and Lincoln sure as hell knew what he was doing. The only thing he didn't know was what he was going to do with all the money he'd made. That is, until a little birdie told the 14-year-old Lincoln how much his RuneScape gold was worth on certain sites. Lincoln started offloading some of his excess wealth to third-party sites, turning his gaming habit into an actual real-life moneymaker.
So he's a gold seller.
Highly against the RuneScape rules if you weren't aware. But somehow Lincoln scraped by on just temporary mutes or bans, never receiving anything permanent. This might come as a surprise to you, but giving a 14-year-old a slap on the wrist when they do something wrong generally doesn't stop them from doing it again. And so, the staking proceeds kept making him richer in real life, selling gold for about 17,000 New Zealand dollars, equal to about 10,000 US dollars in 2000.
Wait, selling how much gold for $10,000?
2006. And whilst his throwaway account got banned after selling everything it had, his main account remained active and looking innocent in the eyes of Jagex. Now, Lincoln wasn't, and whilst his throwaway account got banned after selling everything it had, his main account.
Okay, so he gave all the gold to a throwaway account, then sold everything on that account, but then that throwaway account got banned. Okay, typical. That's...
remained active and looking innocent in the eyes of Jagex. Now, Lincoln wasn't offloading everything through his alts. When you have that much money, why not pimp out your account? So he dumped some of his wealth into buyable skills, achieving pretty respectable results, such as rank 318 prayer with a level of 91, and rank 109 crafting with a level of 95. It's just a shame that he started to train those skills so much later than everyone else. If he'd been able to grind the buyable skills from their release, he'd probably have been able to snag a few rank 1 positions on the leaderboard. Wouldn't that be funny? Anyway, you'll never guess what they released on the 31st of May 2006. Construction, the hottest new skill on the market, released on a Wednesday as far as Jagex were concerned. But that UK to New Zealand time zone meant that it dropped on a Thursday night for poor Lincoln. A school night, no less. The burdens of real life stopped him from securing an early lead, but he certainly put in the work, buying up as many resources as he could from the World 2 trading hotspots. He had the materials, he just needed the time. By the time he hit 65 construction, he was rank 35 on the high scores. That's not that far from rank 1. It actually seemed doable. It was time to go all in. Kirstu sold 2 party hats from his collection to fund his construction supply, giving him 250 mil in liquid assets. This wasn't just enough for 99, this was enough to splurge on it. Kirstu opted to build mahogany tables, using a butler to turn logs into planks for him. A very expensive but very fast method. Beyond this, he also recruited 3 friends to buy any and all mahogany planks they saw being traded on the public market. This wasn't just to increase his supply, this was to ensure his competition wouldn't have any for themselves. While 3 people weren't going to be enough to monopolize the market, they were enough to put a huge dent in it. As he stormed to level 78, he still only had half the XP that rank 1 had accumulated in this time. Both Monkey Mojo and Noobfrey had 3.2 million XP to Kirstu's humble 1.7, and there was no doubt that they also had surplus cash of their own to throw around. Cursed You was fast, but he had an education and a bedtime to slow him down. There was no way he'd been able to do this alone. So it's a good thing he wasn't alone. He was one half of the Cursed You brothers, remember? So over the weekend he brought in Josh to work in shifts. While Lincoln slept, Josh would keep playing, keeping the grind going until Lincoln awoke the next morning and took over again. 24 hours a day of non-stop efficient training over the weekend. Now his competition were the ones who couldn't keep up. As he reached level 88, Cursed You hit rank 1 on the high scores for the first time. The end was in sight.
Okay. Can anyone give me like a rundown of about how much like real life time has passed so far in this? I actually. Months? 3 days? I don't know. I would imagine a couple of days. 3 to 4 days? Okay.
He just had to keep the momentum going. Lincoln pleaded with his parents to let him take a few days off school to do this. If he could train all day, the rank was his for sure. But if he couldn't, his foes would have a chance to overtake him. Upon hearing their child ask to take time off school to spend the day playing video games, his parents looked at each other, did the responsible thing, and said, yes. Who knows why they let him do it? Maybe they knew about his real-world trading earnings and thought of it as him working overtime at a job. But whatever the reason, it cemented his ultimate fate in unchangeable stone. Now that his name was up in lights at the coveted rank 1 position, a lot of eyes fell on Cursed You. And this was during the RuneScape golden era. Who was this kid who came out of nowhere? How did they overthrow the competition so quickly? Can I see his house? The average player in 06 didn't really understand the game, especially when compared to the modern knowledge we have of its mechanics. Everyone had just assumed that rank 1 construction meant that you had the coolest house in the game and had pimped it out to the max. Cursed You's house was just a collection of empty rooms, with naught but a single mahogany table that was being destroyed and rebuilt over and over. He didn't need anything else. That would be, dare I say, XP waste. Of course, it wasn't just adoring fans trying to get in touch with Cursed You, cheering him on or begging to see his ultra-cool Omega house. His competition slid into the PMs to ask when he was ever going to log out, or how big his bank was, because theirs was definitely bigger. If you had 500 mil, they had 501 mil, that sort of thing. RuneScape was really just a kid's playground back in the day, huh? The race was a lot closer than Cursed You would have liked, however. Even after the day spent no-lifing the skill, his rank 1 position was dangerously close to being overthrown. What's worse, as he reached level 96, he was forced to take a break. Not by his parents, mind you. They were happy for him to sink all day into the game. It was by his clan, DI, who were threatening to kick him out if he didn't join them on a PKing trip. Just ignore the fact that he was racing for a historic milestone, I guess. RuneScape really was just a kid's playground back in the day.
Well, to be fair, back then, maybe they had the mindset, like, no one knew RuneScape was going to be popular. For all you knew at the time, they could all be like, RuneScape's going to die in a year. Who cares? Right? Let's have fun right now. They didn't know it's a big deal. Maybe, I didn't play. It was already huge? No? Okay. All right.
Actually gave Cursed You a reason to spruce up his house, however. Since everyone would want to have a look at it after the clan event finished, he threw up some minor furniture as decorations for the party he'd be hosting. This didn't last long, however, since he really needed to get back to training, and he forcibly kicked out all the PKers from his house party.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
This PKing trip could quite easily have cost him the race. But once again, fate intervened, and he not only kept his rank 1 position, he finally gave himself a buffer. By level 98, he was 1.2 million XP ahead of rank 2, and him being the first to 99 was basically a given. With his future achievement locked in, he wasted no time preparing to celebrate. Since you can't invite people to your house in building mode, Cursed You decided to make flat packs to get the last few drops of XP with his friends and clanmates around. With a few planks and a couple clicks, Cursed You became the only person in RuneScape with 99 construction, to a small and intimate audience that didn't overwhelm his computer in the slightest.
Sometimes foreshadowing is...
With his achievement immortalized in screenshots, Cursed You opened the house to the masses of people who had been requesting a private tour of the residence for days. Calls to action were posted on all the popular fan sites and official forums, telling people to subscribe to Will Miss It and to hit the bell to be notified of all future uploads. Or, as he put it, feel free to drop by right now. I'm on World 111 with chat on. Remington, by the way.
Okay. So, chapter 1 was just a story of how he got rank 1. How a little kid had parents that let him play all day, probably because he sold RuneScape Gold for real life money. And then a couple of hurdles here and there with like his guild and other competitors. And everyone thought his house was going to be super duper cool because everyone was fucking back then and thought the highest crafting would be the coolest and nicest house, when really it's just optimizing, but people didn't understand the autism of optimizing to get rank 1. And they all wanted to see his house, but it's going to be shit. All right, chapter 2. Let's see.
So, everyone remembers the massacre as taking place on the 6th of the 6th of the 6th. It's catchy, good optics, yada yada yada. But Cursed You is from New Zealand. That's so far off the side of the world that half the maps don't even include it. So the time zones have gotten pretty muddy here over the years. Some people say the party took place on the 5th, some say the 6th, some say the 7th. The uploader of the original Falador Massacre video claims the party was held at 7 PM Australian time, but Jagex staff claimed they were woken up at 2 AM to try and fix the resulting issues, so that doesn't match up. Luckily, we don't have to guess. Cursed You's party invitation was posted at 11:09 PM UTC, 1 hour prior to Jagex's time zone, placing the party at just past midnight in the UK on the 6th of June 2006.
Is funnier. Just go with that.
And still on the 5th of June for our
These
American
specifics
friends.
are stupid.
Funnily enough, Lincoln gave his buddy Josh absolutely no credit for all the hours he put in on construction during those late nights. He couldn't risk getting banned during his own party.
Foreshadowing.
Partygoers rushes to the house, building up quite an audience in a very short period of time. In only minutes, hundreds of players poured in, all eager to see the construction king and the castle he had made.
Okay.
One such player was the also 16-year-old Brian, hailing from the United States. Brian was pretty much a nobody, really. Just your average RuneScape player at the time. A super cool teenager who was into metal music and video games, unlike any other 16-year-old at the time. He'd actually got into RuneScape because of a friend of his, Voodoo Legion, who'd he met previously on a different game. Brian first tried out RuneScape in May 2005, making his first account, which you all probably guessed the name of. That's right, it was S2Cell. Early on, he died to a scorpion and lost all of his items, and decided to make a brand new account instead of rebuilding. From that point on, Brian would go by a new name, one that would go down in the history books forever. I mean, let's be real here. You almost certainly know Brian by a different name. That one being... Duriel321 quickly fell in love with PKing, just as Cursed You had done all those years ago. If he wasn't in the wilderness, he was training his combat skills or preparing to jump back into it. Voodoo Legion eventually introduced him to Evolution X, a large PKing clan that had built up a good reputation in the community. They had weekly events where they would do things like kill all the players at the Wilderness Greater Demons. Before the addition of obelisks in April 2006, let them spread their reign of terror over the entire wilderness. This was still 2006, so no one was crazy at it or anything, but Duriel definitely knew how to PK, and he certainly had a taste for it. And sure enough, in the early evening of the 5th of June 2006 US time, Duriel was sitting on TeamSpeak with some of his friends when one of them, Alien, told him to come visit a house party in World 111, the Australian homeworld. Cursed You was the first person to hit 99 construction, and was hosting a massive party that everyone was going to. So, sure enough, Duriel decided to hop over and see what all the fuss was about. Interestingly enough, Cursed You had made a dungeon, a floor of the house where people could fight each other when PvP was turned on. Showing up with some basic gear he was wearing at the time, he stepped through the Remington portal and got to partying. And by partying, I mean bashing other people's faces in. Perfectly safe, of course. You didn't lose anything if you died in the dungeon. It was just for fun. You'd just re-enter the house, climb back downstairs and start all over again. That's all it was ever meant to be. A place for safe, friendly PvP. Now, when I said everyone was at the party, out of the 1,200 players online in the world, KUWAGO would in later years estimate that 800 of them were all at the party. RuneScape worlds could reasonably hold up to 2,000 people spread across the map without too much trouble. But if you had a lot of people in one place, such as the 800 attendees cramped inside KUWAGO's home, things started to chug. And oh boy, was it starting to lag. About 30 minutes past midnight UK time, Duriel, barely able to see what was going on, died in the dungeon and respawned outside, before re-entering and made his way over to the throne room to see what the magic ball thing was. And as he gets to it, the screen freezes completely. A loading message appears in the top left of the corner, and before he knows it, he's back in Remington, outside the house portal. So was everyone. KUWAGO had kicked all several hundred players from his house in a desperate attempt to stop the lag. His house was now only open to his friends, some of which joined him back inside, eager to keep the party going as a small gathering that only the cool kids could partake in. Little did they know, this was the only safe place left in the entire game. When you have several hundred players all in one area, it can be hard to see what's going on. The game lags, the minimap is filled with white dots, and the main game is covered by an endless sea of players obscuring everything. But something's not right. Some players have health bars, and they're going down. Maybe they're being attacked by a random event or something.
Oh shit.
They've only just left the house. Nothing should be attacking them just yet. Trying to figure out what's going on, Duriel clicks into the ocean of players, expecting to walk to a different spot, but instead he's given an attack option, just like the one he had earlier while he was in the dungeon. Oh dear.
Okay, so the game bugged out.
So what just happened? You might be surprised to hear this, but no one is actually 100% sure what the cause for the open world PvP glitch was. In the years that passed, a few theories have circulated in the community. Depending on who you ask, you'll usually hear that it's something to do with either the combat ring, where being expelled from the house while you had combat enabled let you keep it, or the scrying pool, where being able to spectate somewhere else in the game turned you into an invisible player, and being expelled while using it in a PvP enabled room let you spawn there with PvP still enabled. But there's no shortage of other theories, such as it being down to a last minute code change with the kitchen lorder. But here's the thing, Duriel was by the throne room when he got kicked out, using none of those things. And KUWAGO's clan party at 96 construction didn't result in the bug, despite also expelling his avid PKing friends then. And it's not like they didn't try finding one. So what gives? Well, searching for answers, I got in touch with one of the most important developers at the time.
I want to see the massacre.
Ash, to shed some light on the whole situation. Keep that name in
what
mind.
happened?
We'll be seeing more of him later. Ash didn't know for sure what the exact cause was, but he knows a lot about why it happened, and so do we. As such, we can make some pretty good guesses because of it. How the player-owned house handled combat was weird. When you had PvP challenge mode enabled in the house, variable to everyone in the house that allowed combat. Literally, a blanket variable of you can attack anyone, anywhere. You can kinda see how things went wrong now, but wait. If this variable allowed you to attack anyone, why does PvP challenge mode only work in the dungeon? That's because the house also had a second variable. If you were on the ground or upper floor, or the house didn't have a dungeon at all, the option to attack other players was hidden. A hacky solution, sure, but if you wanted to make a PvP mode that only applied in the dungeon, it definitely worked. You just had to make sure that these variables were wiped whenever you left the house. Using the portal, teleporting, logging out, the developer of the skill, Mod John A, thought of all possible ways you could leave the house, and made sure this variable was reset when you did any of them. But clearly, something was missed. Knowing what we know now, there's a good chance that this missed check has to do with a piece of high-level furniture, the Greater Magic Cage. requiring 89 construction, and only a week after the initial release of the skill. Most players had never seen one, nor interacted with it. Neither had KUWAGO built it when his clanmates believed they had found a bug the day before, as shown in the image they took in the throne room during the same party. All which would explain why the bug wasn't found until now. As the cage is used to trap people, that means additional variables are applied to them, which may have muddied the water for the code. As mentioned earlier, Duriel explained in
Duriel, I die, run up to that magic ball thing next to the throne, and I get booted out of the house.
in an interview 3 hours after the event that he was in the throne room to check out the cage. But he's not the only one. A Swedish user on the DI forums explained only an hour after the massacre that also he could attack people after being teleported from the inside of the greater magic cage. None of the J-mods that actually had a part in fixing the bug knew for sure what actually caused the variable to be smuggled out of the house. Even the skill's developer explained in the Runescape history book that he missed something, but couldn't specify what. Now, obviously, the bug can't be abused today. We're going to be talking more about that later, but to get a true understanding of the greater magic cage's involvement, I made a last attempt to find the cause of the bug by messaging upload manager mod Easty. As a Jagex employee since 2008, few J-mods know the game's coded secrets better than Easty. As an upload manager, he's been in charge of implementing all code involving hotfixes and new updates since 2010. Next to this, he's had a pretty big interest in bug abuse, keeping in touch with RuneScape's bug abuse curator and learning the ways of how to break the game both internally, but also externally. Some might remember him from the Rotten Potato documentary, where Easty was shown to be in contact with the old bug abuse communities. If anyone at Jagex would be able to look up the code and find the bug, it'd be him. But even Easty couldn't say for sure. The construction code has changed a lot over the years, and the closest we can get to the original code is from August 2007, being the same code of the game used to bring back old school. Already at that point had Jagex made several changes to avoid the massacre from ever happening again. But Easty could, after reviewing the 2007 code, make a guess at what happened in June of 2006. Hold on for this, cause we're getting a little technical now.
Yeah, we have been, bro.
When standing in the greater magic cage and somebody pulls the lever, it traps the players inside. If the player chooses to drop them down to the dungeon, an animation plays where the player is falling. As we know, KUWAGO expelled everyone from his house whilst our known PKers were in the cage. And the Swedish user did explain the cage was in the process of teleporting him when he was kicked, suggesting the animation had been activated when KUWAGO hit the emergency brakes. Based on how the code worked at the time, Easty believes this caused a rare instance where two actions happen in the opposite order of what they're meant to do. Assuming KUWAGO expelled everyone in the same game tick as a different player sent the trapped players to the dungeons, the game prioritizes the action activated by the player with the highest player identification number, or PID for short. In 2006, the number each player had depended on how long you had been online on a server. The longer you stayed online, the higher the number you had. And obviously, KUWAGO had been online for longer than most of his party guests, making his action of expelling the guests take priority. So when hundreds of players, including the ones in the cage, spawned outside, the other action was still queued up and played directly after they all had been kicked. Since getting dropped into the dungeon would register your account as being in the dungeon, the variable saying you're on the upper floors of a house disappears, and PvP mode becomes activated. So in summary, you have a variable that turns on open world PvP, and another that stops it if you're on the ground or upper floors of a player-owned house. This is supposed to be removed when you leave the house, but the developer forgot about the greater magic cage. And
like,
now you have open world
this,
PvP turned on thanks to
I just want to see the
stupidly specific circumstances. As long as you don't log out, hop worlds, or teleport, the variable stays visible. Okay, enough on mechanics. It's time to talk about the carnage.
Thank fucking God. That's what I want to see.
As
what
players
actually
start
happened
dropping,
as a result. I don't care
spreads
how it
around
happened.
the Remington House portal. Some people still have no idea what's going on. Others know exactly what is going on. Some players run as fast as they can, not wanting to lose their expensive items they had brought to the prestigious party. Others are just deer in headlights, unable to avert their eyes from the disaster unfolding before them. A party hat is quickly lost in the chaos to a player named Yeti90, punching his victims to death with nothing but a pair of boxing gloves. Others are dying to mere shadows, killers avoiding attention by hiding in the masses. Some of the bug abusers likely teleport or hop worlds in an attempt to make the most of this once-in-a-lifetime chance, only to wipe the variable they accidentally smuggled out. Attending player moderators sound the alarm, with their silver crowns piercing through the chat box like a sword of light dispelling the dark. They warn players to run, report the bug abusers, and beg those same abusers to stop before it's too late. Others rush to the player moderator forums to open a direct line with Jagex, hoping to get in touch before these random killings turn into a full-fledged massacre. Meanwhile, at Jagex HQ, moderators Matt K, Mark R, and Murdoch make up the entirety of the community management team this evening. Having been working for just over 6 hours at this point, it wasn't long until they could finally head home, as their shift ended at 2 AM. But as the ones to deal with player moderators, they quickly noticed the reports coming in over their PMod emergency ticket system, all repeating the same warning about open world PvP.
You used to get them almost like every day or every week. You'd get something similar, which is like, oh my god, PvP's been enabled in this place. You better get there to see what's going on. So we used to get it all the time. So nobody took it seriously. And then we had about 2-3 more tickets come in. It's like, hang on a minute, probably ought to go and have a look at this.
Mod Mark R and Mod Murdoch jumps in game, teleports to Remington, and quickly discovers that the reports are entirely real. Trying to do what they can to remedy the situation, they start warning players to run away and bank their items. Ironically, this just sends more players towards the hot zones of danger when they could have just logged out and been perfectly safe that way. But it was late at night, people were panicking. None of them were prepared for a situation like this, and it was likely just as chaotic in the office as it was in Remington.
I can totally see why you'd go. You want to see what it is, but it's like
the abusers, they're actually struggling to get them all. You know how you can't log out of the game until 10 seconds after combat? Turns out even Jagex couldn't get around that requirement. And so, if someone attacks a player, and then just attacks someone else within 10 seconds of their last kill, they just can't be logged out. Sure, the moment they stop, they'll be slammed by their ban, but until then, they can just go as long as they want. The Remington mass cascades into a system of predators and prey, with those expelled with the attack buttons able to murder any other player in the game, and those without unable to attack back, stuck in a non-PvP zone, only able to watch as their health ticks down until they lose everything they're carrying. With 2 J-mods unable to do anything but watch as the chaos unfolds, those with items to lose run north to the nearest bank, hoping to deposit all of their items before they're forcibly stripped of them. Some players are quick to escape, but not without trouble along the way. One of the bug abusers, Jonathisol0, follows the crowd north to attack players attempting to get to safety. He gets no kills, and attempts his luck against an unsuspecting player doing a farm run. Inside Cursed U's house, however, the Construction King and his friends are completely unaware of the chaos they've caused outside. They're just chilling and enjoying the afterglow of their friend's achievement. However, a lot of the reports flooding in from the PMods are name-dropping him and his party, so a scrambling staff team decided to lock his account just in case he's somehow enabling the bug.
We've got somebody in game who is causing a bug to be abused. The only way to get him to stop it is to get everybody out of his house. So we banned him. In order to stop it then and there, that's the only option you got. You can ban them or let them carry on. It's like, well, you ban them, kicks everybody from the house, and doesn't let them back in again.
So Cursed U is issued a ban. He is forcibly disconnected from the game, and his house immediately closes, with all of his friends forced outside into the masses. People are dying, PMods are shouting, and even a couple J-mods are there trying to save the day. To call it a reality check is the understatement of the century. Cursed U is informed about the chaos over TeamSpeak, and does a cheeky little bit of ban evasion by hopping onto his real-world trading mule account, Hidden P-Hat, to check out the situation for himself. Duriel321, still in Remington, has spent the past minutes observing rather than abusing the bug. Though we know he attacked somebody in the town and discovered the variable still applied to him, it's likely he paused once the J-mods showed up. They clearly didn't know about him just yet, otherwise Duriel would have been just another ban in the Remington carnage. But Brian had always been a PKer. It's the whole reason he played the game, and he'd be given the ability to attack anyone, anywhere. There was no way he was ever going to resist taking the plunge. His TeamSpeak friends, who were fully up to date on what was going on from the perspective of Duriel himself, all encouraged him to keep going. But they had to be smart about it, and laid a plan to do as much damage as possible. He splits off from the crowd, also making his way north towards the nearest bank. But he's not here to deposit his valuables, he's here to bring them out. While running with the fleeing masses, he tells one of his TeamSpeak companions, P6 EMX60, to wait by the Falador Bank so he can accept some items in a trade. By this time, Johnny his old Zero had also made his way to the Falador East Bank, still attacking players in the area. After finally getting a kill, he is attacked by a different player who also has the PvP variable still applied, Runescape Go 1, who is much better geared to fight. Jonah teleports off to escape, simultaneously ending his minutes of attention in the spotlight. As Duriel arrives in the bank, Runescape Go 1 pledges to protect the bystanding players from future killers. Little does he realize, the largest predator of them all is just a few squares away, getting ready to seize the moment.
Okay, so there's a guy that says he'll defend them in the bank, right? He's like, don't worry, I'll defend you guys. But Duriel is able to kill everyone, but he didn't go too hard at the beginning, so the mods didn't ban him. But he still has the ability to kill everyone, right? Okay, smart. Love this. Continue.
All of his days in PvP had been building towards. While most players
and
were
he's
still
getting his
attacking
best
random
gear.
players in Remington, Duriel and his encouraging friends were ready to abuse the bug to its fullest potential. He knew the consequences. He knew he wouldn't make it out of this unpunished, but he knew this was his chance to go down in history as a legend. He heads out of the bank and enters a trade with his waiting friend. What items did he trade, you ask? Well, we're not sure. There's no way to know what was in his inventory. It's a pretty safe bet to assume that Duriel was offloading some of his most valuable items, fully expecting an incoming ban for his upcoming actions. But with both of them ending the trade with a thanks, it was time to make history. Brian and his TeamSpeak friends had laid an evil plan. While players had started to reach Falador to bank their items, no one had reached the neighboring towns. So, taking a leisurely stroll, Duriel made his way to the once named Ghost Town. If he'd tried to teleport with an Amulet of Glory, he'd have lost his PvP variable, something he didn't know about but avoided by sheer luck. If he'd tried to world hop in an attempt to tear down the busy hotspots of World 2, he would have also lost the variable. There were many opportunities during the night where Duriel could have easily come to an early end, and he just happened to avoid them all. And so, Duriel arrived in Edgeville with a rogue variable still primed. The unsuspecting players in Edgeville thought nothing of it. People go there all the time, after all. No one could have expected that this was going to be a ghost town once more.
Shit.
With the element of surprise on his side, Duriel immediately started swinging at the players, targeting those bearing the most expensive items. PKers returning from the wilderness with hard-won spoils, Alkers barely paying attention to the game as they tore through their giant piles of items, and those displaying their obscene wealth through equipped items. As Duriel's spree is going on, his friends on TeamSpeak are calling people over to Edgeville for Duriel to slay. One of the unfortunate victims answering the call is Primo, a wealthy player carrying his beloved green party hat. Just seconds after he stepped foot inside Edgeville, Primo is dead. Brian is filled with adrenaline, seeing the expensive paper hat appear on the ground before him, and equips the infamous green party hat that he'd wear as his spree continued. As the kills racked up, players started crowding around Duriel, wondering what was going on as the killings continued. Around this point, Duriel removed both a white and a yellow party hat from their previous owners. However, he was actually unable to pick up much loot for himself, as the greedy onlookers seized the opportunity to grab what they could, descending on party hats and high-level gear like the vultures that they were. Duriel knew a ban was incoming. He wasn't in it for the money. He couldn't be. It was a bloodlust driven entirely by an adrenaline rush, a lust for chaos. As fearful players fled Edgeville, they made west for Falador, hoping to get away, and eager to hunt down the rich and wealthy just within his grasp.
Falador is a
Duriel
place.
gave chase. While Duriel had already torn up Edgeville and is making their way to Falador from the north, players in Remington finally heed the advice of the J-mods and make their way to Falador to bank their items, having seen all the bug abusers in the area start to disappear and believing the glitch to finally be over. Even Mod Mark R and Mod Murdoch fall for this misconception, seeing a peaceful Remington and believing it's all over. Rather than following the players to Falador, they log out, believing their job to be done. Fresh blood runs to Falador from the south, running straight north in hopes of finding safety. They slam into the refugees from Edgeville, with a one-man army hot in their trail. Remington may have found peace, but that's because the chaos had all gone north. And with a mass amount of targets congregating in Falador Square, and Duriel descending from the north, the stage is set for the greatest disaster RuneScape has ever seen. Anticipating what comes next,
we're not even there
some
yet?
bystanders fire up their recording software, not wanting to miss a second of what follows. And with players starting to drop like flies, more and more eyes are morbidly drawn to the madness. But those pale in comparison to the hundreds of thousands of eyes that would descend on the videos of the event over the years to come. Some of the most infamous RuneScape footage that has ever been uploaded to YouTube.
Bank your items. Really?
For 5 long minutes, the rampage races Falador to the ground. PMods beg for players to get away and bank their items, but people are enthralled by the history in the making, and the pleas go unheard. Friends message friends to come and see, and as word spreads around the game, more and more people descend on Falador to watch the bloodshed for themselves. Within the last hour, the 1,200 players on World 111 had reached its max capacity of 2,000, with several more queuing up to get in. Mere hours earlier, this had been Cursed Use Day. It was now entirely Duriel's, with a ferocious stack of people following him around, an unhinged collection of people egging him on, asking him to kill them or chanting "Dur scared" on repeat. After building up this army of followers and clearing Falador of targets, Duriel decides to head back to Edgeville to take down the sneaky players who thought they'd managed to evade him. With impending doom returning to the edge of the wilderness, PMods continue to beg for help on the forums. Someone, anyone at Jagex, we need you! Well, they did have Jagex at the scene. Having realized the problem had spread further than Remington, Mod Murdoch logged back in to try and solve the problem. If he could force Duriel from the game, they could slam the banhammer on him, but Duriel was unbannable as long as he stayed in combat, and high on the bloodlust from the bug, he wasn't going to let enough time pass between kills to leave combat mode. With a pool of targets around him, why wait 10 seconds when you could immediately kill someone else? So Murdoch went for the second best thing Jagex could do. That is, asking Duriel as kindly as possible to stop, please and thank you. If J-mod powers weren't going to save the day, maybe words would. Unsurprisingly, this didn't stop Duriel. However, Murdoch was hot on Duriel's trail. He had to slip up eventually. There was no way he could keep up the perfect murderous pace for hours on end. And sure enough, Duriel slipped up. GHJJF, who just so happened to be the leader of Cursed Use Clan, DI, became Duriel's last target, barely surviving next to Barbarian Village. As Duriel heads dead north to Edgeville on the hunt for more victims, too much time passes before he manages to strike again. 10 seconds are quickly gone. Mod Murdoch slams the disconnect button and Duriel is ejected from the game, the almighty train coming to an immediate halt. Duriel hadn't been banned, however, only disconnected. Mod Murdoch were probably more concerned about getting the biggest predator offline before doing anything more complicated. Duriel immediately logs back in, but with the killer variable removed by the logout, his killing spree is done for good. Duriel's not stupid, he knows his time is up. So, with his last moments in Gielinor, he removes his green party hat and trades it to his longtime friend, Voodoo Legion. With his Harlequin prize in the hand of his trusted companion, Duriel turns to dust, disintegrating into nothing as he is disconnected once more, with a permanent ban applied to his account. After about an hour of stress, fear, and death, the infamous massacre had seemingly come to an end. But the funny thing is, Duriel had managed to keep going for such a long time simply because he ran to a different town entirely to begin with. By the time the reports of Duriel's rampage had made it to Jagex, the killings in Remington and southern Falador had already lasted for 20 to 30 minutes. The largest predator might have been taken down, but who knows how many other killers were still running around the game? Who knows what events haven't reached community management's ears? And who knows if it's not all about to happen again?
Damn.
The bug was still in the game. This was only the start of a very long night for Jagex.
Emergency in Cambridge. Okay.
To say Night Shift were struggling was an understatement. One of the biggest sources of stress was to do with escalation. With no developers in the office overnight, there was no one on hand to fix the bug. Community management certainly couldn't do it. Do they hope for the best, cross their fingers that the bug doesn't become widespread with more offenders appearing and let it get fixed in the morning? Or do they...
Yeah, I think the video is pretty much over. The aftermath, I mean, I'd assume people were like, I lost my items, I want them back. No, sorry. Damn. Seems like a lot of stars had to align for that to have happened.